5 Orange Pips, an abbreviated story for learners of English. That day, in the second half of September, there was an extremely strong storm. All day the wind screamed, and the rain fell against the windows. When the evening came, the storm grew even stronger and louder. Sherlock Holmes sat at one side of his fireplace reading. I was sitting at the other one watching the flames, feeling happy that I can stay in a warm flat. My wife was on a visit to her mother's, so for a few days I stayed at Baker Street with Sherlock. "Oh, I am sure that I heard the bell," I said, and looked at my friend. "Who could come tonight? Your friend?"
"I don't have any other friend than you,"
he answered. "A client, then?"
"If so, it is a serious case. No one would come in such weather if it wasn't really serious. But I think it will be a landlady's lover."
But Sherlock Holmes was wrong. Someone knocked on our door.
"Come in,"
Sherlock said. The man who entered was young and well-dressed. I could see that his face was white and his eyes tired. He seemed like a man who has a really big problem.
"I am sorry to come so late and in such weather,"
he said.
"Give me your coat and umbrella,"
Holmes said.
"They will dry over here."
"I have come for advice."
"That is easy to give."
"And help."
"That's not always so easy."
"I have heard of you, Mr. Holmes. I heard from Major Prendergast how you saved him in the Tankerville Club scandal."
Of course, people thought that he was cheating at cards, but they were wrong.
"He said that you could solve anything,
He said too much.
that you never lose."
I have lost 4 times, 3 times to men, and once to a woman. But it is true that I usually win.
"Then you may help me."
Please, pull your chair to the fire and tell me some details of your case.
"It is all very strange.
Most of the cases here are.
And yet I think that you have never heard a more mysterious and stranger story than the one that happened to my family."
I am really interested.
Holmes said.
Please give me the basic facts, and then I will ask you about the details.
The young man pulled his chair up and pushed his wet feet out towards the fire.
"My name,"
he said,
"is John Openshaw, but the whole problem started before I was born, and it has stayed with my family for many years now. My grandfather had 2 sons, my Uncle Elias and my father Joseph. My father had a small company at Coventry, and after some time he was so successful that he sold his business and retired. My Uncle Elias went to America when he was a young man and became a farmer in Florida, where he was very successful too. During the Civil War, he fought for the South and became a colonel. When the South gave up, my uncle returned to his farm, where he worked for 3 or 4 years. In about 1869 or 1870, he came back to Europe and bought a small farm in Sussex, near Horsham. He had got really rich in the States, and he left them because he didn't like the black people and the fact that they got more and more rights. He was a strange man. He got angry easily and used dirty words a lot. He didn't like society, and during all the years that he lived at Horsham, I think he never went to the town. He had a garden and 2 or 3 fields round his house, and there he walked, but very often he would stay in his room and wouldn't leave it for weeks. He drank a lot of alcohol and smoked a lot too. He didn't want any friends, and he didn't want to see even his brother. He didn't mind me. In fact, he liked me so much that when I was 12, it was in the year 1878, he asked my father to let me live with him, and he was very kind to me. When he didn't drink, we would play backgammon and chess. I represented him, and by the time that I was 16, I was the master of the house. I kept all the keys and could go where I liked and do what I liked. There was just one room I could not go into. Of course, I was curious, so I looked through the keyhole, but all I could see were old boxes. One day, it was in March, 1883, a letter with a foreign stamp arrived for my uncle. It was very strange for him to receive letters. "From India," he said as he took it up. "Pondicherry postmark. What can this be?" He opened it quickly, and there were 5 little dried orange pips. I began to laugh at this, but then I saw his face. "Kay! Kay! Kay!" he screamed, and then, my God, my bad past has found me." "What is it, Uncle?" I cried. "Death," he said, and went to his room. I took the envelope and saw that inside the envelope there were 3 Ks written in red color. There was nothing else, only the 5 dried pips. Why was my uncle so scared? I left the breakfast table, and as I went up the stairs, I met him with an old key, which must have belonged to the locked room, in one hand, and a small box in the other. "They may do what they like, but I'll win," he said. "Tell Mary that I want fire in my room today, and send for a lawyer." I did as he ordered, and when the lawyer arrived, my uncle asked me to come to his room. The fire was burning brightly, and it was full of burnt paper. The box was open and empty. As I looked at the box, I saw that there were 3 Ks written on it too. "I wish you, John," said my uncle, "to witness my will. I leave my farm to my brother, your father, and one day you will get it. If you can, enjoy it in peace, well and good. If you find you cannot, take my advice, my boy, and leave it to your worst enemy. I am sorry to give you such a tricky thing, but I don't know what is going to happen. Please sign the paper where Mr. Fordham shows you." I signed the paper, and the lawyer took it away with him. This thing made a deep impression on me, and I thought about it a lot, but I could not come up with any solution, and I felt quite scared. But as weeks passed and nothing happened, I started to feel calmer. But my uncle changed. He drank more than ever, and then he sometimes got so drunk that he ran out of the house with a gun and shouted that he was not afraid of any man. But it was clear that he was really scared. Well, and in the end, there came a night when he got drunk, ran out of the house and never came back. We found him in a little pool, which was at the end of the garden. There was no sign of any fight, and the water was only 60 centimeters deep, so the police said that he killed himself. But I didn't believe it. My uncle was scared of death. Then my father got the farm and some £14,000.
Can I interrupt you?
Holmes said.
Your story is one of the most interesting I have ever heard. But do you remember the exact dates when your uncle received the letter and the date when he died?
The letter arrived on March 10th, 1883. His death was 7 weeks later, at night of May 2nd.
Thank you. Please, go on.
When my father took the farm, we went into the locked room. We found the box there, but it was empty. Inside the box there were written the letters KKK and letters and documents. We think that these documents were destroyed by my uncle. Otherwise, there were only many papers and notebooks which described what my uncle did in America. Well, it was the beginning of 1884 when my father came to live at Horsham, and all went as well as possible until the January of 1885. On the 4th of January, I heard my father give a cry of surprise as we sat together at the breakfast table. He was sitting there with an envelope in one hand and 5 dried orange pips in the other one. He had always laughed at my story about the uncle, but he looked very scared now. "What on earth does this mean, John?" he asked. I was scared too. "It is KKK, I said. He looked inside the envelope. "Yes, it is," he cried. "Here are the very letters, but there is something above them too." "Put the papers on the bench in the garden," I read over his shoulder. "What papers? What bench?" he asked. "The bench in the garden. There is only one," I said, "but the papers must be those that the uncle burnt." "Pooh," he said in the end. "We are in a civilized country here. Where does the thing come from?" "From Dundee," I answered after checking the postmark. "It is a bad joke," he said. "I will do nothing." "I would certainly speak to the police," I said. "They would laugh at me. I will do nothing." "Then let me do it?" "No, you mustn't. I don't want the police to think that we are stupid." It was useless to argue with him, but I was afraid. On the 3rd day after the letter came, My father went to visit an old friend, Major Freebody. I was happy that he went there because I thought that he was farther from danger when he was away from home. But I was wrong. On the second day after my father left, I received a telegram from the Major. My father had fallen into a deep hole and broke his head. I hurried there, but he died a few hours after my arrival. It seems that he was coming back home, and because he didn't know the way well, he fell into a deep hole by accident. The police said it was an accident and didn't care about it anymore. I examined every fact connected with his death carefully, but I couldn't find anything which could suggest the idea of murder. There were no signs of fight, no footmarks, no robbery, no strangers upon the roads. And yet I was quite sure that there was something bad about it. In this way I got the farm and the money. You will ask me why I did not sell it? I answer, because I thought that our problems were connected with my uncle's life, not with the house, and that the danger would be the same anywhere else too. It was in January 1885 that my poor father died, and 2 years and 8 months have passed since then. During that time I have lived happily at Horsham, and I had begun to hope that this problem had passed away from the family. But yesterday I got this too.
The young man took from his coat an envelope and shook out 5 little dried orange pips.
This is the envelope,
he continued.
The postmark is London, eastern part. Inside there are the same words which were in my father's last message, KKK, and then put the papers on the bench.
What have you done?
Asked Holmes.
Nothing.
Nothing?
To tell the truth,
He put his face into his thin, white hands.
I have felt that there is nothing I can do.
Tut, tut!
Cried Sherlock Holmes.
You must act, man, or you are lost. Only an action can save you. This is no time for being sad now.
I have seen the police,
Ah,
but they listened to my story with a smile. I am sure that the inspector thinks that the letters are all just bad jokes, and that the deaths of my relations were just accidents.
Holmes shook his hands in the air.
imbecility.
He cried.
They have, however, given me a policeman who stays in the house with me.
Has he come with you tonight?
No, he has to stay in the house.
Again Holmes was angry.
Why did you not come at once?
I did not know about you. It was only today that I spoke to Major Prendergast about my troubles, and he advised me to come to you. It has been 2 days since you received the letter. It might be late now. You have no other information or a detail which might help us? There is one thing,
John Openshaw said, and he took an old piece of blue paper out of his coat pocket.
I think that on the day when my uncle burnt the papers, I noticed that the papers had this color. I found this sheet on the floor of his room, and I believe that this one was not burnt by accident, but I don't think it will help us much. I think it is a page from a diary. It was certainly written by my uncle.
Holmes moved the lamp, and we both looked at the sheet of paper. At the top, there was written, March 1869, and lower there were the following words, which didn't make much sense. 4th. Hudson came. Same old platform. 7th. Sent the pips to Macaulay, Paramore and John Swain of St. Augustine. 9th. Macaulay cleared. 10th. John Swain cleared. 12th. Visited Paramore. All well.
Thank you,
Said Holmes, and returned the paper to our visitor.
and now you must not lose any time. You must go home and act immediately.
What shall I do?
There is only one thing to do. Put this paper into the box. You must also put in a note to say that all the other papers were burnt by your uncle, and that this is the only one which you have. Then put the box on the bench. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do not try to catch the people. First, we have to stop the danger, and only then we can try to solve the mystery and to punish the bad men.
Thank you.
The young man said and put on his coat.
I will do what you said.
Hurry up. And above all, take care of yourself because you are in a real danger. How do you go back?
By train from Waterloo.
It is not yet 9. The streets will be crowded, so I think you should be safe. But be careful.
I've got a gun.
That's good. Tomorrow I will try to solve your case.
Will you come to Horsham?
No, your secret is hidden here in London, and I will find it here.
I will visit you in a day or two and tell you what happened to the box and the papers. I will take your advice.
He shook hands with us and went away. Outside, it was still raining and the wind was blowing. Sherlock Holmes sat for some time in silence. Then he lit his pipe and smoked.
I think, Watson,
He said at last.
that this is the most interesting case we have ever had.
But do you have, I asked, any idea who these dangerous men are?
I think it is absolutely clear.
He answered. Then what are they? Who is this KKK? And why does he attack this unhappy family? Sherlock Holmes closed his eyes and placed his elbows upon the arms of his chair.
Please, can you hand me the letter K of the American Encyclopedia, which stands on the shelf next to you? Thank you. Now, let us think about the situation and see what may be deduced from it. In the first place, I think that it is clear that Colonel Openshaw had some very strong reason for leaving America. Men of his age do not change all their life easily. The fact that he wanted to be alone suggests that he was afraid of someone or something, so we may believe that it was fear of someone or something which drove him from America. Did you notice the postmarks of those letters?
The first was from Pondicherry, the second from Dundee, and the third from London.
From East London. What do you deduce from that?
They are all ports. The writer was on a ship.
Excellent. The writer was probably on a ship. And now let us consider another fact. When the letter came from India, it took 7 weeks before someone died. In Dundee, it was only some 3 or 4 days. Does that mean anything?
A longer way to travel.
But the letter had also a longer way to come.
Then I do not know.
I believe it is because the man or men are on a sailing ship. It looks as if they always send the letter before they start their mission. You see how quickly the action followed the letter when it came from Dundee. If they had come from India in a steamer, they would have arrived almost as soon as their letter. But it took them 7 weeks. I think that those 7 weeks were the difference between the boat which brought the letter and the sailing boat which brought the writer.
It is possible.
And now you see why I asked young Openshaw to be careful. The death has always come at the end of the time which it would take the senders to travel the distance. But this one comes from London, and that is why we do not have much time.
Good God, I cried. Why do they do it?
The papers which the uncle had are clearly extremely important for the person or persons in the sailing ship. I think that it is quite clear that there must be more than one of them. A single man could not have killed so perfectly. They want to get the papers. So, as you see, KKK cannot stand for an individual. They must stand for a group of people.
But what group?
Have you never
Said Sherlock Holmes.
heard of the Ku Klux Klan?
I have not. Holmes turned over the leaves of the book on his knees.
Here it is.
He said after a while.
Ku Klux Klan. This terrible secret group was formed by some ex-Confederate soldiers in the southern states after the Civil War, and it quickly formed local branches in different parts of the country, mainly in Tennessee, Louisiana, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. Its power was used for the terrorizing of the black men and murdering and driving from the country of those who didn't want to obey them. Before each action, they usually sent a warning to the people. This warning could be, for example, melon seeds or orange pips. When the person got such a warning, he could either publicly announce that he changed his opinion or run away from the country. If he didn't do this, he would always die in a strange way. The organization was so perfect that nearly no one was able to oppose them. For some years, the organization worked very well, but then it suddenly collapsed in 1869.
Holmes laid down the book and said,
Do you see that the sudden end of the organization happened at the same time when Openshaw ran away from America with the papers? There are probably many people in the South who will not sleep well until the papers are found.
Then the page we have seen.
It is a typical example. If I remember right, there was, sent the pips to A, B, and C. That means that they sent the warning to them. Then there was written that A and B cleared, or left the country, and finally that C was visited. I am afraid that it means that he was killed. I believe that the only chance young Openshaw has is to do what I have told him. There is nothing more to be said or done tonight.
The sky was blue in the morning, and the sun was shining. Sherlock Holmes was already at breakfast when I came there.
Sorry for not waiting for you,
He said,
I have a long day before me. I will try to solve young Openshaw's case.
"What steps will you take?" I asked.
It will very much depend on the answers to my first questions. I may have to go to Horsham.
"You will not go there first?"
No, I will start in the city. Just ring the bell and the maid will bring up your coffee.
As I waited, I took the unopened newspaper from the table and looked over it. "Holmes," I cried, "you are too late."
Ah,
He said,
I feared as much. How was it done?
"Tragedy near Waterloo Bridge," I read. "Between 9 and 10 last night, Police Constable Cook on duty near Waterloo Bridge heard a cry for help and a splash. The night, however, was really dark and stormy, so, in spite of the help of several people who were going by, it was quite impossible to save the man. The police found the body several hours later. It was a young gentleman whose name was John Openshaw. It is believed that he may have been hurrying down to catch the last train from Waterloo Station, and that in his hurry and the darkness he missed his path and walked into the river. There were no traces of violence, and it is clear that it was an accident." We sat in silence for some minutes, Holmes more shaken than I had ever seen him.
Now it is personal, Watson.
He said at last.
I will catch them. They must be really clever devils. How could they get him down there? It is not on the direct line to the station. The bridge was probably too crowded for them. Well, Watson, we will see who will win in the end. I am going out now.
To the police?
No, I will be the police.
I had a lot of patience that day, and I returned to Baker Street in the evening. Sherlock Holmes had not come back yet. It was nearly 10 o'clock when he came. He was looking white and tired. He sat down and started eating. "You are hungry," I remarked.
I have had nothing since breakfast.
"Nothing?
Nothing. I had no time to think of it.
And have you succeeded?
Yes,
You know who they are?"
I know them, and I will give them the same medicine they serve.
"What do you mean?" He took an orange from the cupboard and squeezed out the pips on the table. He took 5 of them and put them into an envelope. On the inside he wrote SH for J.O. Then he wrote the address. Captain James Calhoun, Ship Lone Star, Savannah, Georgia.
That will wait for him when he arrives.
He said and laughed.
It may give him a sleepless night. He will know the death is coming as Openshaw did.
"And who is this Captain Calhoun?"
The leader of the gang.
"How did you find him?" He took a large sheet of paper from his pocket. It was full of dates and names.
I have spent the whole day,
He said.
studying what each ship that was in Pondicherry, India, in January and February in 1883. There were 36 ships which came there during those months.
"What then?"
I searched the Dundee records, and when I found that only the ship Lone Star was in both places at those times, I was quite sure. I then asked which ships are now in the port of London.
"Yes?"
The Lone Star arrived here last week. I went down there and found that she had left this morning. It went home to Savannah.
"What will you do now?"
There are 3 Americans on that ship. The others are Finns and Germans. I know also that they were all 3 away from the ship last night. By the time their sailing ship reaches Savannah, the mailboat will have carried this letter, and the telegram will have informed the police of Savannah that these 3 men are wanted here for murder.
However, this never happened. We waited for some news from Savannah, but none came. The Lone Star sank in the middle of the Atlantic, and all the people died before Sherlock could punish them.
Thank you for listening to this story. This story is a part of the book 5 Sherlock Holmes Stories, which you can buy on Amazon. You will find the link in the description. Thank you.